All right, welcome everyone to Wednesday Wellness Chat. I'm Dr. Michelle Fritsch with Propel Comprehensive Wellness. Today we're going to dive into some stories because often asked, why do we do what we do? What's it all about? And the whole purpose behind Propel is to help someone nearing retirement, not there yet, but nearing retirement, create a wellness portfolio. So why does that matter and what does that mean? I want to explain that through some stories. So, first of all, often people come to us when they are ready to sell a business or they are thinking about retiring. Often leaders, people who really get their personal fulfillment from the job that they have. In those cases, it is good to be able to manage health through that stressful period of ending a career. Whether selling a business, which that entire process is known to have a lot of stress affiliated with it, or even somebody, as we have people here on the phone who've had amazingly big leadership responsibilities. And often when you're finishing a career like that, there's a huge list of last items to be done, of succession planning to be done, of making sure that everything is buttoned up before leaving. That is a time when health can often slip away before we even realize it. The other big aspect is who are you going to be on that other side? So let's dive into some stories. I'll mention a gentleman, owner of a business. He has grown that business. It's in more than one continent, and it has had a huge impact, the business that he's had. In the process of preparing to sell, not even in the sales process yet, he had a back surgery, and I think a piece of that was related to all of the stress and all of the work to be done had caused some weight gain. And with the weight gain, his back was having more issues. So he went for a back surgery and ended up with a spinal leak. That is not a typical outcome, but incredibly painful. And he actually spent the next few months mostly on his back because we get these raging headaches if he sat up. Not what he was expecting, not part of his plan at a time when he was trying to get his business ready to sell, but it was what it was. And so, because we were already working together, it was an opportunity for him to have someone who understands the healthcare process to help him figure out how to advocate through that, be a support person, someone just to listen, because it was a very frustrating period of time. Since then, he has regotten control of his overall health, has lost some weight, and is nearing the end of that cycle of selling his business. And we've worked a lot on stress management through that process. Another story is someone who came to me after retirement because retirement was forced upon him when it was found that he had something called an abdominal aortic aneurysm, which means in his aorta, part of the shunting of blood through his body, there was a part of his artery that was weak, had very weak walls, which puts him at risk that if his blood pressure goes up too much, there's a chance that could rupture. And so it's a difficult diagnosis. It means that he's got to really curtail his physical activity. And this man was a police officer, somebody who would run at a second's notice, and he had to stop that profession. The biggest impact so far we've been able to have with him, not only supporting him through the stress of this, but it has been to be able to help him find access to the medications that he has to take at a reduced cost. So at first, when these were diagnosed and prescribed for him, his cost for medications was extremely large at a time when his income was reduced because he was forced into retirement. We were able to save him $800 a month by finding other access to those medications. It's not our typical thing, but it's just part of being comprehensive and taking care of someone where they are. There's someone I'm working with right now who has chosen to identify purpose prior to selling his business. So the plan is to sell the business, but he recognizes that he'll lose himself once that responsibility is gone, and he wants to proactively figure that out. And along the way, he's also recognizing that there are some things that bring about some anxiety in his life and some things that he's just sort of processing through. We're not his counselor. He actually has a counselor, and then I applaud him for that. But we're helping him identify where his passions are, where he wants to have the greatest impact beyond his current situation. Another one. These are all men lately. I do have some women's stories as well. But another man has been trying to figure out purpose. He has had a very successful career. As you define success, he's exceeded the metrics set for him in his job. He's made a very good salary. He's well prepared financially for retirement. All of those things were in place, but he never felt fulfilled by what he was doing. And he's recognized that now. And so we've been on a journey to identify, well, what would be fulfilling for him because he wants that in his life. And now that he can be thinking about ending his regular career and moving on to something else, he's very drawn to something that could be fulfilling. So it was interesting. We've been experiencing some places that address some of the things that bother him in the world. And in doing that, one day during a conversation, there are certain types of places he loves to go. And he figured out that he could actually go there for extended periods of time. His wife loves to do the same thing. Go there for extended periods as like a volunteer or a paid helper to experience those places and those things that they like to do. He likes to give tennis lessons. He loves to give back to youth. And so he started formulating this plan for how he could take his interest and his loves and the things he likes to do for others and turn those into his next fulfilling chapter of his life. And unexpectedly, on Tuesday, I got a text that he just resigned. So he took very quick action because he's pursuing those things that he can now have a big impact and live the life that he's always wanted. I have worked with women too, and there have been situations where in general, women tend to have a little bit more of it planned when they come to me, but there are certain pieces of it that they want to dive through together. In one instance, it was risk factors because our current healthcare system tends to engage with you after something has happened. There's something that can be diagnosed, something has broken, is not working properly. But there are ways that we can know what our risks are, what things might happen to us and take action to prevent those or at least minimize the impact of those proactively. And so we worked with her on that. And as a result, she plans to actually keep part-time staying as a veterinarian and working on her family farm, but she's doing so in such a way that she knows some of her risks of physical injury and like orthopedic injury, and she's taking some definitive steps to make sure that she minimizes those risks. So I love doing this. I can give so many stories, especially of, um, I've got one more I have to tell. This was a gentleman who had, again, started a business from scratch he started at a very young age. His business was very successful, and he had gone through the entire process to sell it to a nephew. And so now he and his wife had some things they wanted to do within the community, and they had some trips that they wanted to take. But first, she needed a knee replacement. Her knee was going to slow them down on their planned travels. They'd been talking about it for a while. She went in for the knee replacement and had what's called delirium. And it's not completely uncommon, especially as we're aging, the risk of of our brain just not responding well to the anesthesia and to the stress of a surgery. And it can look like that person is no longer thinking right. Maybe looks like they have dementia. And in this case, when she came out of surgery, the medical team thought that probably she had dementia and she was being a little combative and was not resting as they needed her to. So they gave her some medications to calm her down. When someone has delirium, their brain just needs to be sort of left alone so that it can recover from that delirium, and giving medications that impact the brain, in this case, that slow it down, just slowed down her recovery process. She stayed on those medications. Her husband took her home and she was so confused she couldn't do her daily activities. He was on the verge of actually admitting her to a nursing home, where if that had happened and she had stayed on those medications, she would never have been cognitively sharp again. Her thinking would not have been sharp again, and probably she would have declined very rapidly. In that case, we came in later in the process, and were able to get her back off of those medications slowly and carefully. Her brain was able to recover from the delirium, and they were able to take off on their plans. With my background being in geriatrics, I can give you countless stories of removing medications that were causing harm or recommending medications when they weren't being used and they could be of benefit. So I'm not here to say that all medications are bad. It's not that. But being used carefully and for people to recognize that when their retirement plans, when their future plans aren't going as they had intended, especially if one or the other is not fully functional and you can't figure out why. Sometimes we're able to figure that out either through the medications or through navigating the healthcare system and getting the right people on board. So I know a lot of times people think, I've given my time, I've given myself, I've had my career, I've had my success, I've accumulated the money that I need. I am just ready to move on. And studies are showing, a study actually just came out in the Wall Street Journal that showed kind of pulled together some research that's been done around the world that if someone retires without a plan, they tend to stop thinking as sharply. They're not challenging their brain, and they tend to just kind of slowly start to decline, or in some cases, rapidly decline. We believe at Propel that that is preventable. I'm just going to show you a slide real quick. And in preventing that, we help you stay fully engaged in life. I'm going to show it this way. Help you stay fully engaged in life so that those years ahead last a really long time and you are relevant, you are still serving and giving to others. It's coming back and boomeranging into fulfillment for yourself because you have a plan to stay healthy. You know your risks and you're taking care of them. You've uncovered and figured out purpose in that next phase. You're ready to jump into that. You know how to stay mentally sharp and socially active. You know how to protect your family and make some future decisions so they're not made in the heat of an emotional moment. Should you need to become a caregiver or have a caregiver, you've got all the resources at your fingertips to do that. So that is what we call a wellness portfolio. These are just a few of the stories of having somebody who's a healthcare expert as well as somebody who understands the process of planning for retirement. Having those people in your back pocket as you're going through this process can really make the difference for your future. So I invite you to contact me at any time. I thank you for being here, and I would love to answer any questions.